Welcome by this tutorial for when you rent a camera at the Blue Mountain Creative Space, especially for beginners. I will explain in generally what the camera is and what it can do in a very basic mode. So for example, when you pick up a camera, and in this case I have an Olympus in my hand, which is not the one you will get, but the principles are more or less the same. So when you get a camera, you'll probably be overwhelmed by all the buttons and all the things that it can do. That's what the factory wants, because it wants to show off and make sure that they have the camera with all the maximum possibilities. So when you grab a camera, of course you look for the start button or on and on off switch. So basically it's written, kind of written here on the side. If you have a Canon camera, it's also on and off, so you can't miss that. Then again, then you have your screen. Almost all cameras will have a screen where you can see the settings of your camera. So for example, here we have an info button on the side. So if you press it, you get more information. And when you press it again, you have more information again, or you can have nothing if you don't want to be disturbed by all the information on the side. So I put it on so you can see at least what your shutter time is and what your f-stop is. Now here it gets a little difficult. When you get a camera in your hand, you can choose different modes. So for example, you can choose automatic or program, which is often named P or A. You can also choose manual. You can choose aperture priority, and you can choose shutter speed priority. So depending on how advanced you feel with the camera, you can choose either one of these. I would suggest not to start with manual straight away. I would suggest to play with automatic or program for a while until you feel the camera feels familiar. Once you get a little bit more familiar, you can use, for example, priority. I will show you here in the camera so we can see it. This is now manual, and I push a little button which is like a lock, and I unlock it, so, and I can put it on, for example, shutter speed. So if it's on shutter speed priority, it means everything else the camera does by itself except the shutter speed. Why would you do that? Shutter speed is for example, sport photos. If you want to make sure that the person who comes along on his motorbike or running is completely sharp. So when you want to have somebody really sharp and there's no movement in the photo, you will take like a shutter speed of 1/2000th of 1/4000th. If you want to make the person or the car that's driving by very blurry, you make a low shutter speed, like 1/100th, 1/60th, 1/30th. And that's what you can do with this button called shutter speed priority. The other one here is called aperture priority, which means that you can influence the f-stop. And the f-stop means, what do you want to have sharp? Is it a landscape? You want to have everything sharp? Or is it just the person? Maybe even the eyes? So when you put it on aperture, you move your lens and you press the focus button just a little bit in, like a little bit, it becomes sharp, but I hope you can see it with this camera. The background is already unsharp because the shutter, the f-stop is very, very small. And I can change that. I can, for example, I can do F22, which says that the background becomes more sharp.